Thanks, everyone. It's a little humbling to be on this stage. I feel like I'm in the math nerd group for the evening. I'm from Asheville, North Carolina. Can we get the slides? Asheville is a small town. It's about 90,000 people, about 4 hours northeast of here. Beautiful setting. We're in the Blue Ridge Parkway area up in the Smoky Mountains. We have bluegrass music, beer. We've got 40 breweries in town for 90,000 people. We drink a lot. That's about 5,000 people per brewery, if you're doing the math. And like any quirky little mountain town, we have men dressed as nuns on tall bikes that eat fire. It's your typical little place. It didn't start that way. Just show of hands, who's been to Asheville before? Oh, wow. That's crazy. Well, thanks. Thanks for drinking our beer. It didn't start that way. It was kind of a messy place. It had suffered a lot of the urban decline that many cities have done. Our company is a spin-off of a real estate developer, Julian Price, who invested his money downtown to do redevelopment. So we did your typical rehab, fix this building into this, bringing people downtown. But often we found ourselves telling the story of numbers, doing scary math, if you will. This is what we're known for. A lot of people have used this graphic and basically comparing our building downtown against a Walmart and making things apples to apples so you can see the net productivity of a simple 6-story building against a Walmart, right? Just put the numbers up there and let the numbers do the talking. Well, taking that and going into a new direction, David Downey had asked me, he's like, Joe, what's your big idea? Like, what can you put out for there? We want to put the E back in the IDA. And we kind of thought about that. We actually had a conversation, and for me, it kind of brought me back to this moment. I attended the International Association of Tax Assessing Officers Conference. Anybody go to an assessors conference before? No? Assessors conferences kind of make this conference feel like Burning Man by comparison. It's probably the most square conference I've ever been to, but it was an amazing experience. First thing in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, this guy is presenting. He's the head of tax policy for Walmart. Charles Terrell was doing this amazing presentation on how cheap a Walmart building is. And he's just showing spreadsheet after spreadsheet about how cheap those buildings are. I'm in the back of the room thinking this is brilliant. He's getting all of his tax bills across the entire country lowered in one meeting. How brilliant is that? But the citizen inside me was hearing, that's all I could hear was how low of a tax he was going to pay. So during the Q&A, I asked him, I said, what's the useful life of one of your buildings? And he immediately shot back, 15 years. We'll be out of that building in 15 years. Our job is to start a depreciation cycle and get that down to nothing again, and we move on to a new building. So I was talking with David about this. We tend to villainize Walmart. I actually don't have a problem with Walmart. What we should understand is don't hate the player, hate the game. Understand our tax system. They're just very facile with it. So my message here is understanding the game. The game actually goes back to the start of our country. This is another corporation. This is the East India Bay Tea Company flag. And our country formed a revolt when we actually taxed tea differently in the States or the colonies then, versus England. We found that patently unfair. So here's a tax system that actually started back then that drives what we're dealing with today. Think of another corporation. We'll just read it. This is from Oxford American Dictionary. It says to constitute a company, a city, or other organization as a legal corporation. You all get this. You manage corporations, right, inside larger corporations called cities and counties. So my corporation, the city of Asheville, is a $12.8 billion real estate investment development, right? My city is a $1 billion, or my downtown is a $1 billion investment in the corporation. So it's just a finite boundary of land that has to be managed. Y'all get this? I mean, this is how we think of cities. So to use a quote from Ted Turner, life is a game and money is how we keep score. Well, if we're keeping score, Asheville is 6 times the value of this guy. So if he's keeping numbers, if he understands the return of a TV commercial, shouldn't we be doing this stuff? So if you look at land like a product, if we look at the buildings as crops, we've done this all across the country. We've done it in Canada, New Zealand. When you mash it up, it's real simple. For every dollar of county taxes somebody's paying in the county, out in the county, a city resident's paying about $5 to the county per acre. The Walmart's at $7, the mall's at $9, but as soon as you get to a 2-story building, this could be in Driggs, Idaho, or downtown Durham, North Carolina. As soon as you get to a 2-story building, it bumps up. And it's not a proportional growth, it's an exponential growth skyward as you go into the downtown. So the numbers are there to explain what we do. Can we take the city and peel it apart? Can we look at it in layers? So we're used to seeing the city with infrastructure, and on the infrastructure and streets and pipes, the buildings are built, right? We also map the ologies, the hydrology, the geology, things like that. What we've kind of gotten into is separating nature and the man-made and mapping the economics, making like an economic MRI of your community and seeing how the cash flow operates, right? So take back to Asheville for a second. This is my county. This is how typically elected officials look at the place. So we have non-taxable in gray. So this is a big park up here, so we have non-taxable. Green is low value, purple is hot value. This is the Biltmore estate, this big purple blob. It's a $100 million house, right? When Mr. Cecil, heir to the Vanderbilt fortune, shows up at one of our council meetings, we all genuflect and thank him for his time. He's got a $100 million house, but it's the biggest house in the entire United States, right? He's got 8,000 acres of land. That's not a fair way to look at his real estate. That's like the biggest gas tank in the community versus the miles per gallon. When we change the numbers, and rather than say total value, let's do value per acre, the map changes, and I'll just show it to you in 3D. Anybody want to take a guess where downtown Asheville is? Right? You know, you can see it right here. Boom, there's the spike. And we can also see Black Mountain, our little sister 10 miles to the east. We can see its little main street like Baby Bear, and this is Mama Bear, right? And it's not just the property tax productivity. We've done this in other places. There's communities like in Colorado, you deal with retail taxes, same with California. And sorry to the folks in Alabama, but y'all operate just like California and Colorado. Retail taxes drive cities. In Austin, we did the analysis. Again, here's Travis County. You can see downtown Austin, clear as day. That big purple spike right there. The fun thing about Austin, the Austin people are here, I've seen you all around. We mapped their booze sales. They drink a lot in their downtown. For anybody who's been to 6th Street, they're like walking zombies at night, all of the drinking that happens there. But there's also the retail sales, and this was kind of telling that we have all these biases of how we think cities operate. This is the retail zone. This is the mall zone that's almost monolithically retail, and downtown is not only heads and shoulders, it's leaps and bounds beyond that, right? So it's not just Austin. We've seen it in Austin. We've seen it in Syracuse, New York. Again, downtown killing the mall, and even Nashville. The data is there to show it. You just have to display it in an apples-to-apples way. Canadians. Y'all are a little different. Seriously, let's hear it for the Canadians. Finally, the Canadians are awesome. Please go to Winnipeg next year. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing how functionally and financially illiterate our country is compared to the Canadians. You guys are rock stars. We've learned a lot from the Canadians. Again, we did a project in Ontario and Guelph. You see their data. Now, not only is their downtown popping up, but all the rest of their world is so much more fiscally productive than in a typical American city. So there's stuff to learn there. Back to what we've been hearing all day. The data is there. You just have to put it out there. So Lafayette, Louisiana, there's the Lafayette crowds here. They asked us to go the next step further. If we're doing the productivity, can you do the cost? Can you do the whole net of this? So here's their model. This is their downtown. Here's some new urbanism here. And then this is the whole county or the whole parish. Just mapping the roads that they own. They have 6.5 square miles of asphalt that they own. It's a tremendous amount of real estate and cost. Okay, this is in red is the cost of all those roads. In blue is the revenue to pay for the roads. Show of hands, who can see as much revenue as the cost? So we said, the red is 18 times the revenue that you have, and the sad part is half of this revenue is already committed to the bonds on the service on the red. So you don't get that money back. That goes straight to the bonding agencies. You're going broke, right? So this is how it was responded to. This is one of the counselors. I love this quote. It's not where you live, it's what you believe, right? People in Lafayette are awesome. The Public Works Director responded to this statement by saying this: there's no such thing as an infrastructure fairy. So we had to Photoshop Kevin in on this one because he's awesome. And by the way, look at Kevin's title, the world's greatest Public Works Director, and he really is. So Kevin said, could you just show it in a different way? So this is a side view of the model. In red is the sunk costs in the county. In green is the revenue. That's the tax production. Like any business, you want to net the cash in versus the cash out. So what's in the black and what's in the red, and here's the whole county in 3D. Taking this thing and dropping it on the floor so it all pops up vertically, this is what it looks like. So you can now see the cost of that pattern of development. There's just too much infrastructure in the ground for the revenue that it pays. So did y'all get this? So just breaking this down, you can see the red out here in the belt on the outside versus the productivity of the inside. Just do more downtown to build yourself out of this. Scaling it back, here's the simple truth. In 1950, they had 34,000 people in town, about 5 feet of pipe per person, and about 2.4 fire hydrants per 1,000 people. They've grown their population. They've grown their population to 121,000 people. They've grown their feet of pipe per person to 50, and their fire hydrants per 1,000 to 51. So they've grown their population 350%. They've grown their liability 1,000 and 2,000%. And they told us the whole time, like, look, Joe, we got oil money out of the Gulf, we got rich, which is true. They did increase their revenue. They've increased their household income from $28,000 a household to about $45,000 a household. So just look at the math here. They've grown their wealth by 160%. They've grown their liability by thousands of percent. This is a hole that they can't dig themselves out of. This is happening in many cities across our country. We put in too much infrastructure for our ability to pay for it. Now has come time for that to pay for that. So since we're in Georgia, we did a project up in Gwinnett County. Is anybody from Gwinnett County here? Awesome. So I was under strict orders in Gwinnett County. Before we did our presentation, I was not allowed to say 4 words. I wasn't allowed to say the word urban, which is really hard when your company is named Urban3. I couldn't say city. I couldn't say town or municipal. So we did their data. When we pulled their data, we found out that, oh, here, by the way, they're a rural county. They're not Atlanta. They're outside the Beltway. This is rural out here. This is the county seat, Lawrenceville. I'd never heard of Lawrenceville before we came down here. And I was under orders to not say these words. So when I asked them, I said, why? And they said, because we're rural. We're rural people out here. We're not urban. Fair enough. There are 800,000 people in that county. When I called them up with that number, I was told by my client, she goes, yeah, but honey, you need to understand, we're 460 square miles. We're huge, right? All right, well, 800,000 divided by 460 is about 1,900 people per square mile, which is less dense than DeKalb, which is what we're sitting in right now, right? But we had other data. What's that? Oh, we're in Fulton? Oh, I'm across the line. Sorry. Fulton County is actually more dense as well. But we had all of this other data, and we put it up there for them. So realize that they're actually 200 people per square mile denser than Mecklenburg. Do y'all know what's in Mecklenburg, North Carolina? Charlotte. This is Nashville right here. There's 600 people denser than Nashville. Both of these places have a football team. Gwinnett County doesn't. This is Austin, Raleigh, Asheville, and this is Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So when we did their data, we turned their model on its side, and it's like a 1970s shag carpet. It's the same thing all the way across. This is what we typically see when we do a community. So we can see Chapel Hill, Carborough, and Hillsborough, and I can see Main Street, Main Street, Main Street in this model, right? Why did they do this? So looking at their data, the most value that they got was $8 million an acre. That's the top grosser in their product. And all of these places are less dense. So even though you think that you can produce value with density, you really don't. You can actually have suburban density that's more dense than a city. So putting Gwinnett County, Travis County, and Davidson County at the same scale, side by side, we ran an economic heart monitor just to show them how they're pulsing out. So we've got a peak value in Nashville of $192 million an acre, a peak value of $476 an acre in Austin, and we're flatlining at $8 million an acre in Lawrenceville. That's the reality of their product. Do y'all follow me with this? So this is the data that's out there. Charleston going to the other side and seeing an old city. You can see the peninsula and downtown Charleston killing it, but there's another thing that we found here. Charleston actually predates our country. They have buildings older than the United States. This is a building built in 1686. It's the oldest liquor store in the country. So we decided, let's just grab all the buildings that predate the United States. Here they are. Here they are in a map, and here's their data. They're 21 acres of buildings. Last year, they paid the county $600,000 in taxes. It just so happens that their best Walmart is also 21 acres, and it only paid the county $47,000. So those buildings have been producing that value for 240 years. That Walmart's going to be gone by 2020. That's the reality of our tax system, and that's the math that's hiding in plain sight. We need to do this stuff. It's not market forces driving this. It's all tax policy, and we need to understand this. Moses didn't deliver our tax codes, people. We need to understand this stuff. So back to that chart, realize this used to be a retail building, and it's come back in many lives. It's now residential with office and retail, producing wealth for my community. We need to understand how to produce value long term. Downtowns are the golden goose producing the eggs for folks. We need to keep feeding those golden goose and not kill them and make pate, right? Just do the math on this. that this is our tax policy driving this, and we should be literate about that. So thank you.